Ray Calloway has been fixing cars in Leapers Fork, Tennessee since 1987. Small town, one main road, a repair shop that smells like motor oil and old coffee, with a bulletin board full of business cards from people who moved away years ago. He's not the kind of man who talks much. 36 years of diagnosing problems by sound, by feel, by instinct. He's rebuilt engines that the dealerships had given up on. He's coaxed vehicles back to life that other mechanics called dead. His hands have opened more engine bays than most people have opened car doors. In October of last year, a woman named Carol Marsh called him from 3 counties over. She'd inherited her late father's property, a farmhouse, some land, and inside the old barn, a 1971 Ford F-100 that hadn't been started since 1982. She wanted to know if it was worth anything. Said it had sentimental value, but she didn't know much about it. Her father never talked about it. It just sat in the barn, covered in a canvas tarp year after year. Ray said he'd take a look. Drove out there with his flatbed, pulled the tarp back. The F-100 was dusty and patient, the way old things get when they've been waiting a long time and have stopped expecting anything. He loaded it up and brought it back to the shop. The engine wouldn't turn over. That wasn't the surprise after 40 years. But as Ray started the teardown, he noticed something unusual immediately. The engine had been rebuilt, professionally. At some point in its history, someone had done serious work on this truck. Not dealership work, not factory work. Personal work. Someone who knew exactly what they were doing had taken this engine apart and put it back together entirely by hand. The tool marks were old. The gasket materials dated to the late 1970s. Someone had rebuilt this engine around 1978 or 1979, drove it for a few years, and then parked it in a barn and never touched it again. That caught Ray's attention. Because people don't rebuild engines and then abandon them. Not unless something happened first. He kept working, draining fluids, pulling the intake manifold, breaking down the top end. Standard teardown. Methodical, rain hitting the metal roof of the shop, steady and slow. It was when he pulled the valve cover that he found the first clue. Not inside the engine, on the underside of the valve cover itself, scratched into the metal with what looked like a nail or a punch, were 2 letters and 4 numbers. V.K. 1974. Ray photographed it. Didn't think much yet. Continued the teardown. 2 hours later, he pulled the intake manifold free, a heavy piece of iron that required leverage and patience. And when he set it aside and shone his flashlight down into the valley of the engine block, something caught the light. Something that didn't belong. It was wrapped in oilcloth. Old, dark, compressed flat by the weight of the manifold above it for what must have been decades. Whatever was inside had been placed there deliberately, in the one place in an engine that would stay relatively dry and relatively protected. The valley between the cylinder heads, beneath the intake manifold. Ray set it on his workbench under the light. He unfolded it slowly. The cloth was stiff with age, but intact. Whatever was inside had been sealed with something, a layer of old wax paper beneath the outer cloth. Inside were 3 things: a photograph, a set of military dog tags, and a single handwritten note, folded twice, the paper brown at the edges. Ray says he stood there for a long moment before he touched any of them. I knew whatever this was, it wasn't mine, he said. But I also knew if I didn't look, nobody ever would. He turned over the photograph first. It was a young man in military uniform, Vietnam era from the look of it. maybe 20 years old, standing in front of this exact truck, the F-100, back when it was new, with his arm around a young woman. Both of them, squinting into the sun, had something just outside the frame. On the back, in neat handwriting, Frank and Elaine, August 1971, before he left. The dog tags read, Kowalski, Frank J., U.S. Army, blood type O positive, no religion listed, service number etched clean. Ray picked up the note last, unfolded it carefully, the paper threatening to tear at the creases. It was short, 12 lines, handwritten in the same neat script as the back of the photograph. If you're reading this, something happened to me. I hid these here because I wanted something to survive if I didn't. This truck was mine before the war. When I came back, if I came back, I was going to rebuild her and drive her to find Elaine. I rebuilt the engine in 1978. I found her. She had moved on, and I understood. I'm not angry. I just wanted someone to know that she was worth looking for. The truck runs good now. Take care of her. It wasn't signed, just the initials at the end. V.K. Ray called Carol Marsh that same evening, told her what he found. She went quiet for a long time on the phone. Her father's name had been Gerald Marsh. He'd bought the F-100 at an estate sale sometime in the early 1980s. He never mentioned where it came from or who had owned it. It was just a truck to him, a working truck that he parked when it needed more repair than he could afford. Ray spent 2 weeks trying to trace Frank Kowalski. Military records, online databases, obituaries. It took longer than he expected, but he found what he was looking for. Frank Joseph Kowalski had died in 2019 in Knoxville. He was 68 years old. He never married. He had worked as a machinist for most of his adult life, which explained the precision of that engine rebuild. His obituary listed no surviving immediate family. There was no one left to call, no family to return the dog tags to, no Elaine to find. But there was a story, a real one. A young man who went to war, came home, rebuilt his truck by hand, found the woman he'd thought about for 3 years, accepted that life had moved differently than he'd planned, and left a note about it anyway. Hidden in an engine, as if he needed the machine to know, even if no one else ever would. Part 5. The Ending. Ray finished the restoration. He got the F-100 running, the first time it had started in over 40 years. He says the engine, Frank's rebuilt engine, ran clean on the first try. Carol Marsh kept the truck. She keeps it in the barn still, but she doesn't cover it anymore. She says she drives it on Sundays sometimes, down the back roads near the farm, windows down, no particular destination. The photograph, the dog tags, and the note are in a frame on her wall now, next to a printed copy of Frank Kowalski's obituary. A man she never met, who hid his whole story inside a machine, waiting for someone to find it. Ray keeps the oilcloth. He says it lives on his workbench. Reminds him, he says, that every car he works on has been somewhere, carried someone, meant something to a person whose name he'll never know. Every engine is a kind of record, not of miles or horsepower, of the hands that touched it, of what those hands were hoping for. Frank Kowalski rebuilt his engine hoping to find someone worth finding. Turns out, someone found him instead.